So I'm part of the Summer Student Innovation Competition that happened last year. And when we entered the competition, we already had a prototype of our product. And I'm a PhD student. I'm in my third year, so I'm kind of panicking. But we're expected to do a lot of research. We're expected to carry out a lot of studies, recruit participants. And in doing so, we just couldn't find anywhere that we could advertise what we was doing. The universities have these notice boards where you can put your research up. If you want to do an online survey, you can advertise for participants here, you can advertise them for there. But no one really knows where these notice boards are. So we sat down and we thought, how do we get participants and researchers to connect in one place? So that's where we come up with the idea of Call for Participants. It's a single online platform which allows researchers and participants to come together in the same place. We originally released the idea last year, around June, May, June, and we just opened it up for UK institutions. And what this means is, to actually advertise your research, you need a .ac.uk email address, which you all have. And this filtered out anyone just putting research on there. We soon started getting requests from overseas institutions and researchers asking if they could use our site. So we then decided to open it up after finding that a couple of overseas institutions managed to use our site by using colleagues and peers' email addresses, which was quite interesting. And this map was updated in March, actually, so you can see we have a lot of traffic coming from lots of different areas of the world now who use our product. Just to advertise research, and this is anyone from masters, PhD student, research staff, professors. They use this just to advertise their research to a wider audience outside their own network. So we classify Call for Participants as an online participation management system. And what this means is, as a researcher, you can go on there, you can create your a landing page, essentially, where you can advertise your research and put all the key information that you need. You can add your requirements and pre-screening questions. This way that you can sort of channel your participants to one place. They can look at the requirements, they can answer the pre-screening questions, and then this filters out who can and can't participate, as opposed to sort of managing this communication through blanket emails and social networks. This gives you one place to do this in. And this is an example of a landing page. It's quite simple. You have the key information, so where the study is taking place, what type of study it is, how long it's going to take to complete, and any compensation associated with this as well. Some of the key features I mentioned, you can create your own landing page, and in doing so, what you do is you create your own URL. So you have your own link that you can send out individually. And actually, if I just go back, what you can see is it doesn't distract from the research. The idea is that you have your own URL, you send it out to your participants, and then they just see your information. So there's no distractions, there's no other things going on the website. You can share and promote your research through the site as well, and in doing so, using these sort of links here, you create additional URLs and tracking information which gives you more insight into who's looking at your research, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. And what these links do is actually allow you to see how many people have viewed your landing page and how many people have taken part, so you get an idea of the response rate from when you send it out to people. And one of the areas that we didn't realise that we tapped into was actually searching for active research. Now, we all know that we can search for publications and journals and conferences about research that's actually been conducted, but where do you go to look for research that is currently active? Like, when research is actually happening, when you can get involved in it, is there anywhere that you can go and see this information? And we couldn't really find anywhere apart from these smaller notice boards where people do advertise their research. So actually having a centralised place where you can see what's going on right now is really, really interesting. So how does it work? Like I mentioned, you have your email address from your institution and you use this to sign up. You then create a very simple landing page and then you can share this with your networks. And it's just as simple as that. And it's completely free for academic researchers as well. And so if we look at who's actually using the site, as I mentioned, it's been running for about a year now. And it's still in its prototype phase. We have registered researchers, so we can tell this from their email addresses, from 173 different institutions. 86 of them are overseas, so it's about the same here as well. With our participants, it's quite hard to measure who participates in research, because there's a real issue about collecting participant information in addition to the researcher collecting it, because of the ethics that they have to go through and the conditions that they have with the universities. So initially we did start asking participants to register before they took part in research, and we have about 2,000 registered participants, but then we stopped doing this because it was a barrier for people taking part. And we built this tool because we needed it. Coming back to a point Helen made about people, the university expecting you to use technologies and undertake studies and do different courses. We were expected to do a lot of research, but the university doesn't actually support this in any way. It doesn't actually have any support for us to actually go out and get participants. There's no actual resources there for us. And this is what we didn't want. We wanted people to actually take part in the research. So we removed the sign-up process for participants. We do have about 5,000 visitors a month, which is still growing, to our website, predominantly from the UK. But again, from the map you saw earlier, we have them from North America and Australia as well, where the other researchers are based. With actual research, when you think, do people actually take part in the research on our website, or is it just a notice board again? We have about a 15% click-through rate for people who actually go on, view the landing pages, and it's about 15% of them who actually typically go through to then participate. But then this depends on if it's location-based, what the compensation is, etc. And at the minute, we have about 100 active studies each month. Some have been recruiting since we started, so they're still recruiting now since about 12 months now, and some are on there for a week or two. So it depends month to month. So if we have a quick look at call for participants, because you can go on there and have a look yourself now. Where's it gone? Okay, so this is what you see when you go on there now. This is a video just explaining the idea. It's Julie and Bob. Julie's a researcher and Bob's your average guy. And it's about how they connect and how they're different, basically, how a researcher actually tries to find the people they need. It's a really interesting video. As you can see, you've got some studies advertised on the main page as well. And then you can go and just search, and it'll bring up what's actually active on our site now. And you can probably recognise a few of the institutions on here that are currently advertising. There's Oxford Brookes on there. I think someone's from there. Yeah, and this is all the universities that are currently using this, or the researchers from the institutions who are currently using this. Okay. So who is it for? So originally it was just for us, the researchers. We built this because we needed it. And it's for the public as well. There's probably more people than you realise who are actually interested in what the institution's doing in their local area. And they're kind of interested and want to get involved in the research. Typically more so when it comes to charities and research that's associated with people's own personal attributes and conditions. But so the researchers, we know, wanted to use this, and we've seen from when we opened the platform up that people are using it, they like it, it works for them, and we've seen the public are starting to engage. But there's a couple of other players within this system, and one is the institutions. The institutions don't have a way of the ones we've spoken to anyway, don't have a way of actually seeing everything that's going on in their institution in terms of the research. They might know if they put in the effort, they might have a look through all the documents and the sort of paperwork that has to be filled out, who's doing what research and when. But when it comes to actual master's students, master's projects and sort of PhD level as well, there's all these additional research projects that are going on that people don't actually know about. And there's the public engagement officers. We have a sort of an ongoing dialogue with a few public engagement officers, clinical trials managers, and people from like the Catalyst projects, which, if you don't know, they're funded by the Research Council to sort of help public engagement, who are really interested in this site because it essentially acts as a gateway from your institution to sort of the wider public, and it allows you to actually quantify who's engaging in your research, and not just on there's 1,000 people this year who've engaged, but it's actually trying to work out if the people who are engaging are already within the institution or they're from outside the institution, which is really interesting because I'm sure we all know that when you get sent a survey or a piece of research, it's from a peer, it's one of your peers or one of your colleagues. And one of the problems a lot of the institutions have that we've spoken to is that you're not actually allowed to pay people within your same institution to take part in the research, and they're spending a lot of money on themselves in doing so. And then you're not getting anyone engaged from outside the institution. You become a silo, essentially. So these public engagement officers are really interested in this as well. There's a couple of other people, so students, we found that people who do get involved in the research find it really interesting to see what's actively going on. And an indirect effect of what we're advertising, we hope actually sort of helps retention for different institutions, because if you don't know what's going on in your institution, how do you know what you can get involved in, what's interesting to you? How do you know if you want to stay there and be part, and if you want to carry on within the same institution in the same discipline? And it's about exposure as well for what's going on to the rest of the university as well as outside. In addition to that, we've actually been approached by a couple of commercial companies and some charities as well who've seen our product and said, we need this kind of system for us. Now, we're very cautious about opening this up because it's really important for us to have a system that's trusted by institutions. There's nothing worse than letting sort of commercial companies integrate into your system and everyone starts not trusting them and wonder what happened to their data. I'm sure we've all heard the stories. But this actually opens up really good opportunities for collaboration. The commercial companies that have approached us actually work closely with institutions anyway. So they're already based in Warwick, they're based in the innovation parks surrounding institutions. So we're actually sort of testing the water with them with a new product, which I'm going to mention in a minute, in terms of how that might work and how we can actually keep our platform as a trusted academic site, which is really important so that people aren't hesitant to use us. But actually we can sort of inform these kind of collaborations and again, open up to see what's actually happening in terms of current active research. If you're doing the same research as someone in industry, you want to be able to see that and you want to be able to build that bridge. But at the minute, it's a very, very closed ecosystem. So we started off with the researchers, which was us. We're being a little bit selfish. We need a tool. We're going to build this tool. Great, we've got it. And then we put a little bit of effort into trying to get the participants. We don't really do any marketing. What we did do is we went to two freshers fairs last year to kind of test the water with how people respond to signing up to our platform and see if anyone was interested as well. And we, over the course of, say, I think it was about 8 months, we had about 2,000 people sign up. But we get organic traffic now from participants and researchers, so we're comfortable within these environments. The people who we're now speaking to are institutions. So we've done talks like this with Jisc a couple of times last year. Institutions have approached us and they said, we really like this, but it doesn't have our branding on it. Like, yes, we know. And they're like, oh, we really like this, but we want to see everything our people, like our students, our staff, what they're doing. Like, okay, that's okay, but we don't have that yet. And yeah, put our branding on it as well, please. So we've gone back to the drawing board, and when we released this last year, it had a really fast uptake, so we didn't really have time to build it in the way that we wanted it. We sort of built our sort of minimal viable product. It worked, people started using it, and we was then involved with the Jisc Summer Innovation, so it was quite busy all summer. And I'm still a student as well, and so both of my other colleagues, so we're kind of like juggling lots of different roles. And then we have a further collaboration with Jisc started in February this year. And that gave us a chance to actually go back to the drawing board and say, right, what is this product that we want? But not only what we want and what we originally wanted it to be, but what do the institutions now want? What do the researchers now want? So we've got all the feedback from you guys, and we've actually built a new product. On the agenda, there is a link to a page which showcases what the new product will look like. However, this is actually the first ever preview of some sort of working version, so bear with me. As you can see, it looks completely different from the current one. It's a complete overhaul design. It's sort of a much fresher, much more dynamic page. And the reason for this is we just want to integrate all these wonderful tools and features which are going to allow the institutions to integrate with us, public engagement officers to integrate as well. So I'll just go through the site, give you the basic overview. So you have sort of a tiled system here. When you go through, you can just search. So the search page looks a little different. And you have these sort of dynamic search bars as well. But one of the interesting features is this middle one's greyed out. So when you've finished recruiting, you can choose whether you keep your research live on here or not, which again is interesting because if I do a study, I can go on there. Now, if I realise someone's done exactly the same study that I'm doing, you know, it can take years to get published. So in the time that you finish your data collection and you've stopped advertising until you actually publish or go to a conference, there's this period where you're in the dark. You're just sat in an office with all your work and no one knows what the hell you're doing. So this is another way of sort of exposing what you've done and what you're doing. But again, it's a complete option. And as a participant, they can look through and they can just hover over, see the requirements and decide whether they want to click through and participate. Because obviously otherwise you'd have to click on every individual page and you don't want to do that. And when you click through onto a landing page, again, very simple. You have this key essential information at the top, sort of completion time, location, and then you have more information about the ethical approval, about the researcher and the requirements. And then when you take part, we ask for an email address. We don't want to collect participant data, which is kind of unusual. If you talk to any sort of web developers, it's all about collecting information, collecting data, using it for God knows what. We don't really want to do that because it creates, it makes researchers hesitant about using us because obviously they've gone through, it could be 6 months of ethical procedures and paperwork to try and get their study out there, and then they suddenly come to us and go, I can't let you have any of this information. However, we do collect an email address. This stops, it's just sort of a validation. It stops sort of like bots and hackers on our site sort of pretending to take part in research. And additionally, there's some more features which allow, it connects you with the researcher and you can email instructions and calendars and things like that. So it's quite an important feature. And there's these share links at the side. And like I said earlier, they create their own URL. So you get insight into who's seeing your research and how it's been advertised. Right for time. But one of the other things which is quite important is print your poster. This sounds like a really simple feature, but there's lots of biases which come with advertising research online. So we've actually made your landing page and we turn it into a really nice sort of simple poster, and it has its own links as well, so you can see where people are coming from, if it's online or offline. And when you go to your dashboard, you can see how many views and participants you get for all the stats using your own URLs. So it gives you as a researcher much more insight into about how people are finding your research, where they're coming from, where they're taking part as well. And essentially, if they're from the institution or if they're from outside the institution, which is quite important because you can see whether all your friends took part or actual people, which is kind of really important because otherwise you end up spending all your resources on yourselves in your own department, and then it's, yeah. However, talking to institutions again, where's my branding? Okay, so here is what we have. I hope that looks all right on there. It's the colour's off a bit. But we essentially developed a landing page specifically for institutions. So it showcases everything the institution's doing on their very own landing page with their own URL. And the really nice thing about this, again, it doesn't distract. There's none of our branding on there. There's nothing going on. It's just about your institution and your research. And that's what they wanted. You can easily navigate back to our site, or you can just stay on here. And using this link, again, allows the institution to gain that insight about who's coming to their research, who's engaging in their research, and it gives you a much more understanding about where your resources are going and how much effort people are putting into this as well. And the same with the landing page. So when you click on the landing page, no distractions, it's institutional branding, key information, whether they're associated with a particular department as well. And obviously there's ethical approval and about the researcher, as I mentioned before. The way this works is it's completely automatic. So we use, again, the email address to define whether you're part of an institution or not. So if you sign up to this, it's all automated. There isn't, no one's tasked with the sort of jobs of having to try and work out what information's going on there, putting the branding on there, because obviously there's lots of people in each institution, and if we just, if you put this job role on one person, you'll then have to pay them to manage this. So we've automated the whole system. However, we understand on an institutional level, it doesn't always work. Some institutions are more to do with the creative arts, they don't do a lot of research, they don't really need participants. So we've made the same product, but for smaller groups. So again, sort of small departments within institutions can have the same thing where they have their own branding. But But on the smaller level, you can actually log in and see your statistics. On an institutional level, we would actually provide you with the report about all the statistics and all the engagement which is happening. So that went okay, went better than I thought. And all the text is obviously dummy text, so let's go back. Yeah. If you can't see that, it says the public and the researchers. So using call for participants in your institution, I mean, researchers are actually using it now, but I think the main point I want to get across is we can use this as a gateway to actually gain greater insight into how people are conducting research and what they're doing. And we've actually been working with a couple of institutions since the Jisc DigiFest in November last year, where we had a couple of people approach us and we've been engaging with them, and they're helping to shape what we're doing. However, we're a couple of weeks away from launching it. It's going to be ready in about 2 weeks. However, give or take a few weeks testing, it's going to be launched this summer. So we need people to use it. And we work with Jisc and we like Jisc. This would be a great opportunity to offer this to you guys as a trial. So if anyone here comes from sort of a research-intensive department or institution, this could be in your interest to actually shape the way this works for you. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So obviously, we will be sending you emails saying, is it working? How are you finding it? What more can we offer from you as well? And we've already started working with one institution about looking at widgets as well, how to actually integrate our site into their existing sites. And that's something we're doing on the side. So it's free for researchers and it's free for participants. You probably think it's not going to be free for institutions. It is at the minute. We need people to use it because we really want to get your feedback on it. We really want people to trial it and find out if it works for you and if it works for us as well. So my final message for today would be, if you feel like your institution could benefit from using our product, do come and see me, because it's an opportunity to get you set up using this software for free. And because we're launching it in a couple of weeks as well, we want to get you set up as soon as possible so you're there from the start. Yep. And I think that's everything. You can find out more at our callforparticipants.com/partner page, which will give you more insight into the tools and the features and how they can work for you as well.